Hey everybody, Pastor Dan here. I am joined by our new discipleship coordinator, Emily Hector. How are you doing, Emily?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for joining me here. This is part of our Meet the Council series for the next few months. We're going to have videos in our church newsletter where I interview the different council members so that everyone in the congregation can get to know you guys and hear about how to get connected here at our church. So yeah, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. To start things off, Emily, why don't you tell us a little bit about your faith journey?
So I grew up attending a congregational church in Niagara County, very small rural church. It was great. If we had 20 people in church on Sunday, that was a good week. And it was a real close-knit community. So I loved that. When I grew up, went away to college, went to Massachusetts for college, and really stopped going to church. And I have over the years come back to church on and off. But I also sort of wandered and explored other spiritual paths and have learned interesting things along the way. And one of the things that I have found is that even though all of those different spiritual paths that I've read about or studied or practiced have very different language around them and very different practices and very different sort of rituals, maybe, at the core, they're all kind of talking about the same ideas,
Mm,
right? People are asking,
yeah,
human beings are still asking the same questions, and at the core, the answers are pretty similar.
yeah.
Um,
We have a lot more in common than what divides us.
right?
Yeah,
But the language and the vocabulary is so different that sometimes it feels and looks really different.
yeah.
After having done a lot of that, what I find is that now when I read the Bible, when I go to church as a Christian, I have a deeper understanding
Mm,
of my own sort of native spiritual language because I've sort of explored all of these other ways of describing the same ideas. And so I now have sort of a deeper understanding or appreciation for that. And I think the other thing is that while the ideas and concepts are very similar, different paths have different practices. So I've learned a lot of spiritual practices along the way that I didn't learn as a kid going to a congregational church. Meditation, mindfulness, journaling. I have a very comprehensive, deep journaling practice. I spend about an hour every morning. God and I have conversations, right? I read or study or and then reflect on that. So I learned how to pray more deeply in other churches along the way than I did in the church that I grew up in, things like that. So I did a lot of that, but I will say that probably the most pivotal moments for me in my spiritual life have been I've been through some hard things.
mm,
And when those things happened, I sort of was forced to turn to God, right? And I've had moments of like, I can't do this by myself. I'm going to
mm.
need your help. And when that happened is when I watched God really show up for me. So as much as I've done a lot of study and reading and all of that sort of intellectual stuff, I
Yep.
also have this experience of I know when stuff gets hard, God's going to show up for me.
Oh,
And that's really reassuring. So,
yeah. It often is in the challenging times of life that God meets us in an entirely different way and opens us up to new things. You know, those
for
those those
sure.
moments are still very hard, but it can be a bit of the grace in that is the new ways we deepen our relationship with God. I think that's wonderful. So yeah, you talked about kind of exploring different spiritual paths. What led you to our church, and about how long have you been connected to our church?
Yeah. I've been coming to Brockport First Baptist for about 2 years, and I've been a member for about a year and a half. So I'm pretty new still to the congregation. I moved to Brockport about 4 years ago from South Carolina, so I was living out of state. I grew up here in Western New York, but lived out of state for about 30 years and then came back home.
Nice.
And when I moved to Brockport, I didn't have sort of natural ways to connect to the community because I work from home. So I didn't have a workplace to like meet people and connect with people. And I hadn't been a member of a church for probably 8 years when I came to Brockport First Baptist. I had had a negative experience in a church and had kind of walked away and said, I think I'm gonna do this on my own. Again, I have this morning journaling practice. I was like, God and I are just gonna do this on our own for a little while. And while there was good that came from that, I missed that sense of community. And so I recognized that it was time for me to find a faith community again.
Mm,
And I have a number of people in my life that are important to me that are members of the LGBTQ community. And so I was like, absolutely, it must be an open and welcoming and accepting place. Then I came to Brockport First Baptist, and there were a couple of things that happened. And one was that it felt similar to my congregational upbringing, right? So the services felt very similar and very familiar and that kind of thing. So that was nice. I was looking for a place that was going to challenge me to think and learn and grow and continue to do that. And I find that, right, your sermons make us think deeply.
mm.
There's discussion groups and other things that, right, like we're not skimming the
Yeah.
surface, like we're
I
digging
say
in.
sometimes too deeply, right?
I take notes so during the sermons.
Yeah.
So I was looking for that for myself. And then honestly, just the community of people. The people at Brockport First Baptist are amazing. It's a fairly diverse group of people. There's lots of different kinds of people, and they're just good people. Um,
Yes.
I was thinking about this morning before we did this, and what I came up with was I feel like the people at Brockport First Baptist take a couple of things really seriously, one of
Hmm.
which is taking care of other people. Like,
Hmm.
we take that very seriously. I think digging in and sort of asking those deep questions, we take that pretty seriously. And everything else, maybe not so much. So people are fun and playful, and we laugh and joke, and it's just a really nice community of people.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan. I'm biased, but I agree. Our congregation's a great bunch of folks. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the discipleship coordinator? So obviously you're new to the position, and like you mentioned, relatively new to our church. But what does the discipleship coordinator at Brockport First Baptist do?
So what I understand, right, and I'm new to it, but
Mm,
is discipleship is about how we walk together in our faith journey. Right, the disciples walked with Jesus. We're walking with each other as we learn and grow and things like that. So focusing on both youth to a certain extent and which we have other folks who are also focused there, and
mhm,
then programming for adults that will help us all continue to learn and grow. And so it's coordinating programs like discussion groups, Bible studies, other kinds of events, right? Ways to bring people together. So community events, just social events, the ability to all go together and do things. We're talking about going to the RPO concert at the
mhm.
Brockport campus pretty soon
Yep.
in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, July 7th at 7 p.m. Tuesday night.
That's right. Little
Yep.
plug for that.
Yes.
Right. We're talking about a Red Wings game at the end of the summer in
Yeah.
August. So things like that, ways to bring people together. I really enjoy the sermon talk back after church on Sunday. So
Yeah.
generally it's what are the spiritual programs in the church, or what are the ways that people come together to learn and grow.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. That's
I hope I got that
discipleship in our
right.
church. Amen. Yeah. Yeah. And you've already mentioned some great ones. We're doing these kind of community events, community outings this summer. What are some other ways if people want to get involved with discipleship at our church, if people are looking to go a little deeper, what would you recommend?
Again, there are ways to serve during church, serving the children and youth. So if you want to get plugged into helping out in nursery, children's church, youth group, those kinds of things are great. It's a great way for you to disciple younger folks. Getting involved in coming to the potluck, right? And connecting with people and getting to know people, getting involved even during the services, reading, doing announcements, doing being a greeter, taking the collection, things like that. And then we're always sort of having events that will be announced during church. So keep an eye on all of that,
Yep. Also got the Pride Parade coming up.
right?
Combined Pride worship service over at I think it's at Lake Avenue Church in Rochester. Those are in July. I think you already mentioned the Bible in a Year group. It's the first Thursday of every month, I think, where a bunch of us, there's about like 25, 30 people who are doing the readings. And then about half that gets together once a month and we talk through kind of where we're at. And even if you haven't started that, or even if you're not quite interested, you don't know if you want to read the entire Bible, join up with the group. You can see where we're at and maybe jump in on the next book. I think I'm a couple days behind, but we're about to go from Jeremiah into Ezekiel.
I started Ezekiel this morning, so yeah.
Okay, we started Ezekiel this morning. Yeah, I'm like 3 days behind, so I knew Ezekiel's coming. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to deepen your faith and just go a little deeper here at our church.
And I would encourage, if people are watching this and they have ideas that we haven't touched yet or haven't tried to sort of address, if there are needs in the church, that's what I want to understand, is what other needs are in the church that we're not addressing today that we could think about.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because discipleship isn't just about, head knowledge and all that kind of stuff that we get from a class or a sermon, but yeah, serving, volunteering, helping out, discipling other people. Like, that's all part of how we grow in our faith. I love it. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining me. For everyone else, I will see you at worship this Sunday at 10 a.m. Grace and peace.